Hey everyone, welcome to The Path of Me. I'm your host, Wendy Hutchinson, and I have the gorgeous Liliana Hernandez joining us today. Liliana is a mother of two young men, Javier and Brandon. She's a daughter, sister, friend, as well as a bilingual licensed marriage and family therapist with over 25,000 hours. I can't even wrap my mind around that. That's so incredible of accumulated experience. For the past 16 years, she has worked in the mental health field. Liliana has been a coordinator, therapist, supervisor, director, has facilitated women's support groups, retreats, and presented on topics such as trauma, sexual abuse at local workshops, trainings and conferences, and has also been an adjunct professor at University of Psychology teaching community mental health. Oh my gosh. You're so accomplished. So it's so impressive. Towards the tail end of the pandemic, she walked away as director of a mental health agency in her county. And due to mental health, the health toll it was taking on her, she decided to pursue dreams, which was to be self-employed as a clinician, supervisor, life coach, and now has this incredible podcast. You guys should tune in for sure. And her own show titled Corazon, Cultura, Loteria, with the hopes to help women heal and find their voice. Welcome, Lili. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Wendy. Again, thank you.
It's always a
Always
pleasure,
an honor.
an honor
Thank you.
to have you with me. And we are so connected. I think we're like soul sisters in a way, because we've just been
I agree.
I don't know, it's like we kind of go apart and come back together, and it's always like no time at all passed between us, and we just pick right back up. And that's how you know you're totally synced and aligned with that person, right? You just keep reconnecting at
100%.
higher and higher levels. I feel like we keep evolving and coming back together. So tell me, what was 2022 about for you? What were some of the patterns or things that you noticed coming up during 2022 that were presenting for you?
Yeah, great question, Wendy. And I'm thinking, first word that came to mind was finding my own voice and learning to let go of things that didn't serve me, relearning again over and over to say no to things that were not for me. When in the past I was just trying to like be okay with that and people please and um not upset the other person. So I would just do and do and do. And then of course later on, I'd feel sad or hurt or, not heard or in certain ways abandoned. And I just thought at one point, no more. I'm, what do I want? And what do I not want? And having to say no to things that um, were no longer for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, honestly, I just began to say no to things that were not serving me. I think that was the majority of 2022 because I let go of a couple of different items that I'm so happy now without.
You set yourself free with the boundaries, right?
I did. I really did. And what's funny is that in the past, I work a lot with boundaries and talking to women and men as well, and we talk about boundaries and what do those feel like and what when do we set those, and we talk a lot about like family boundaries and boundaries with ourselves and what we're doing and setting ourselves up for. And there was just a moment that I thought, in Spanish we have this saying, no te mordiste la lengua, did you not bite your tongue? There were certain things that I would say sometimes that I was like, oh, okay, note to self, that might be for me. So I sure did. I kind of like went on this it was interesting because I was out of town, I was out of the country, and I was sitting there thinking, I was renegotiating a bit of a contract, and I just thought, okay, I'm getting the money that I'm asking for, but am I happy? Do I want to continue having those interactions on a weekly basis and dealing with A, B, C, and D? And I literally sat there and I thought, no, I don't. I don't. And I love the person that, I was working with. He's been a mentor for a really long time. And I just thought, and that's okay. He can stay as, a past mentor, and I don't have to agree to things that just no longer make me happy.
That is so
So
huge
I walked away from that as well.
because I think, and we've talked about this in prior shows, that our cultures bring with it a lot of emotional guilt and programming about smoothing things over and making everything okay for people, for others at our expense. And so it's one thing to like know it and then consciously choose it, but then it's another thing too to be okay with the boundary. So that takes a little massaging and practice, right? Because you start to say no, and then you kind of feel like you need to explain yourself or you need to compensate somewhere else, make it up to them. Or, I mean, so you kind of got to work through all of this deeper layer of
Yep.
programming and emotion to finally get to that place where you're like, actually, it's just a no, it doesn't work for me anymore.
Actually, it's just a no. And can I add to that is the that part where you said it, like we try to compensate in other ways, and I was trying to like make it work and make sense and be okay with it, because that sense and that value that we grow up with of like you almost owe it. You feel that you owe it to a person because they did A, B, C, and D in your life or in your past,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
they did you the favor of bringing you on board. And I just thought, okay, they brought me on board because I have value and I add
Mhm.
to what they're working on. Um, it wasn't a favor, right? Everything that I had given and provided in the growth of theirs, I was like, I, it was part of a job, but it wasn't just out of like, a favor. So I had to really work that through, because you're right. The other person might want to, maybe sometimes use a little bit of that, you know, against you per se, or even try to sweeten the pot by adding and saying these things that are beautiful in words. But when you come down to it and you're like, well, follow through, past experiences hasn't happened. Don't fall
When
for
you
it
look at the
again.
truth around
And
it and what
when you
the
look at the
actual
truth,
cost benefit is to you, you get a little clarity, right? A little
yes.
bit.
So I've learned that was my 2022 in different ways. And the other thing is that, you and I have talked about this. I had started January of 2022 with my first go at a podcast. And it was under a different name, and that had a lot of meaning and insight for me. And then a few months later, I just thought, this is not the route I want to go. And I needed to rebrand. And it took me time, because I paused and I really sat with it, and I was like, well, who am I letting down? And all these things that I've done, and I've grown, this Instagram, and I've done, all my boys had gifted me a beautiful um uh sign, with this
Oh,
name, and how am I going, and I just thought for a moment, and I need to pivot. It no longer feels right. So coming to those terms with ourselves of like, it's okay to change. It's okay to say this no longer is working for me. It's no longer serving its purpose. I've grown out of A, B, C, and D, and then starting over.
and that's a beautiful
So
thing,
that's
right?
been,
We don't want to remain stagnant or, I mean, the whole reason we're here is for growth, right? Is to learn and evolve, ascend, raise our vibe, become more of ourselves, right? More
yes,
true to ourselves and the essence of who we are. And that requires shifting, pivoting, rebranding and being okay with that because we outgrow what we're doing as we're going through this process, right?
yep.
Giving
And as
ourselves
you say,
permission.
outgrowing, I'm giving ourselves permission, outgrowing, and being okay with outgrowing something, because again, that was part of 2022. So it's realizing, it's setting boundaries, it's
Mhm.
going into what it feels better, but also that part of I've outgrown certain things, and it's okay. It's coming to terms with it's okay to feel that you're at a different, a different place, a different level, you're
Right.
outgrowing things. It's okay. And being okay with that
Totally.
was a ride
But it's
in
not only it's
2022.
not only things, it's people too. Like
Yes.
I've outgrown, I wouldn't say outgrown, but I would say I've changed and let go of so many people who I thought were my people. And I find that I have been a little more introspective and
Mm-hmm.
a little quieter in my life. Where I used to always say yes, 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 yes to everything. Now I just really like my peace and my space, and I'm just a little different. So I'm not a social anymore. Especially with the
Yeah.
pandemic years, I just really got very quiet, So I was wondering if I don't know, I follow your social media. You're always doing something really fabulous and fun. And I'm like, I'm just gonna live vicariously through Lili right now. Who's in
I love
Cabo or
that.
DC or wherever
Thank
you're
you.
at.
You know, I it's interesting because yes, in the past 2 years at minimum, I've done a lot of traveling. I feel that I'm almost making up for my 20s and partial 30s. I started
Tell
traveling
me
in my
about that
30s.
because you had the kids and they were young and you were
I was
struggling.
a single yes, I was a single parent, at the age of 21, and I had 2 little ones. My youngest was 30 days old when I just realized this relationship is not gonna work,
Wow.
and I wanna raise 2 boys, not 3, with all due respect to the man he is now because we're great friends. Um, but I just realized, it's funny because, it maybe 10 years ago, I came to this my boys are now 26 and 28, and, about 10 years ago, I came to this realization that he and I had to have gotten together to have had those boys. That's
Hmm.
it. Because we dated for maybe 5 years, we got together, we had these boys, and 30 days after my second is born, it's like, "Okay, this isn't it for me." And I was okay with moving away. I was okay with having whatever stigma behind, like, "You're supposed to stay together." We had gotten married at this point.
That's a huge
If you're gonna be
revelation. 30 days in, you're still kind of exhausted. You've got a newborn.
it's
And
interesting.
I
Yeah.
mean, to have the courage to do it, I just honor that decision. And I don't know, it felt like I've heard you tell this story before, but it almost feels like there was no other option. This was going to happen.
This
It
was gonna
seems
happen.
like.
It was gonna happen, and there was no back and forth. There was
Right.
no, like, maybe, could be, possibly,
Hmm.
was it the fact that, you're tired and you're just talking out of, like, that tired space of, being a new mother again, having 2 kids under the age of, 2, 2.5, how old are my son was about, he was about to be 2 when my son was born. So, yeah, no, this is the way it was, and I was okay being labeled with whatever in my head I was, 'cause it was never said to my face. No one
Right.
ever said, "Oh,
You
you're a
know, people are
divorcee."
talking, but you just keep
Right, but it
going.
was never said to my and I was just like, "Okay, well, I'll figure this out." And I did slowly and surely. So, again, to continuously follow that path of, like, I wanna travel now. I didn't do it in my 20s. My boys were young. I didn't want to leave them, when they were too young to whatever it was, because I had to work and I had to go to school, and I, juggled a couple of different
Your
jobs to
life was
make ends
very
meet.
full,
Very full. The boys
very
were in
full.
sports. The boys were in private school. I mean, they were I was taking care of business. So this time around, not this time around, but at this point in my life, I'm thinking, what do I want to do?
It's
And
your
I want to
turn.
travel. It's my turn, and my boys are old enough to take care of themselves and the household,
Yeah.
and their things and whatever it is. But I have taken advantage of any opportunity, especially now that I no longer have a 9 to 5, that
Isn't that a
I
gift that you gifted yourself this freedom? And I wanted to ask you about that because I think such a big part of your story is you worked so hard
mm,
to achieve your dream. which was to be a director of a program, right? And it was a huge program, social services program. And then you get there and you're like, this isn't it. And what was that like for you? Like, you have spent your career striving and working and sacrificing to get to this place in your career where you have the income and you have the title and you have the responsibility, all of it. And then to be like, oh, this actually, it's
This isn't
actually
it either.
killing my soul right now. It's crushing me. What was it like to have the realization after investing so much? How did you
You know, it
navigate?
was so yeah, thank you. It was difficult because I didn't wanna believe it. I didn't want to let my mind wander in that for too long because then I felt like I was gonna come to this place of like, "Then what is it, Liliana? What is it?" Like, you're always searching for something and it's never it. Like, what is it? Like your marriage and your partner and, you know, divorcing and getting into many different types of when I was in school, I went through so many different types of academic learning because I was like, I think it's business. No, it's not. Okay, I think it's education. Yeah, no, it's not either. So I've done this often. And I just thought, okay, common denominator is you, Liliana. Like it's you. Like figure it out.
Right.
But once I realized that soul crushing part of it, and I felt it was very similar to other feelings, and I didn't realize that in the moment. I think now that I have, you know, like hindsight is 2020.
Mm-hmm.
That feeling of soul crushing continued to come back. That part of I'm not happy. It makes me sad. This is not the life I want to live. I only have one life. Do you want to spend it in commute, crying your eyes out until you get there, wipe it away, and act like everything's perfectly fine, and then drive home and be sad again? I came to this realization, no, no, that is not it. I don't want to do that. I don't want to fake it for anybody anymore. So I wanted to be real with myself again and realize, okay, are you willing to walk away? And what does that look like? Yes. You know, one thing I've often said, things always work out for me. I look back often on things that I've gone through that have been difficult, and I end up saying, God, things always work out for me. Then I ended up uh pulling a card somewhere, and the message was, you are always divinely guided and protected. And I thought, 100% things will fall into place. So I continue to follow this piece of me that says it's going to be okay. And sometimes we don't trust that. We don't trust that things are going to be okay. Sometimes we're like, but what if, you know, I didn't have insurance. I literally, Wendy, you're going to be so proud of me. I've been out of the 9 to 5 grind in regards to one of the things that did not let me leave for quite some time was the fact that I was not going to have insurance. I wasn't even worried about my retirement. Like, you know, again, I'll figure it out. But I didn't have insurance. And I was like, well, if I don't have insurance, I'm going to have to pay for my insurance. That's going to come out of my pocket. And I did this whole mental thing. And that kept me at my job for probably another additional year. And then when I came to the
Wow, that is
realization,
a
yeah,
long time.
I was like, no, I can't. I'm not going to have insurance. Oh my
Those
God, what am I going to do?
benefits.
Those benefits, right? And then at the end of it, again, crying through, you know, going back to work often, I
Yeah,
just thought, is the insurance worth
right.
my sadness, my soul crushing part, my anxiety that I was starting to build? And I just thought, I'm going to figure it out. So I had been insurance less for a year and a half. And just today is Thursday. On Tuesday, I submitted my, you know, I'm purchasing my own insurance through my own part, and it's a couple of $100 a month. And
I love it.
February 1st is my, you know,
Oh my
effective
God.
date. And I'm like, Liliana, you're such a grown up. Look at
You're
you
like,
getting
look
your
at you go.
own. So things get figured out, right? That held me back for an additional 12 months of my life. And I just thought, look at you. You are doing well for yourself. You can afford, you know, this insurance for you. There it is. It's being handled. And
Mhm.
you're living your I'm living, to my eyes, my best life right now. I am traveling, I am working.
You're
I
fulfilled too.
I'm feeling fulfilled. I feel happy. I work from home. I get to be with my pets all day. I am very strict about my time frame that I only work from 7 a.m. in California to 12. From 1 on, I am doing what I want. I'm going where I want. I'm having lunch with friends. You know, um,
So beautiful.
I'm living. When in the past you were leaving, traveling to work at 7 a.m. to get there by 9, to get home by 6:30 or 7, to have like maybe an hour in between 5 to God, it's so different now.
You're surviving versus living.
Exactly. And now it's thriving.
Mm-hmm.
Thriving, because if I'm heading out to Cabo for my birthday, that's my time. If I am, traveling anywhere, if I'm going to Vallarta and hanging out with a friend that I haven't seen for a moment, we're there in and present, right? You know, I went to Cancun with another girlfriend and we both worked a couple of hours and we're on vacation the rest of the time. Being able to work remotely and do these things and making sure that you're feeling fulfilled, oh, like it's the best feeling. It's really the best
I
feeling.
think it's hard for people to imagine what it looks and feels like because they've been very conditioned to be in the grind. And
We
there's
have.
something scary about not having the guarantee and having to have faith in the unfolding. But I have found that when I walk in faith, which is really the belief, like you have, that there's something bigger out there for me, there's something more aligned coming to me, and I know this and I trust this, even though I'm going blind, like I don't have the details or the timing, but I feel it and it's there. I always go for it because you can't live your life in fear. You become a prisoner. You become a prisoner of the fear. You become a prisoner of the program. You become a prisoner and a slave to the system. And I think it's
100%.
important that at this time, so many of us are on the planet for a very specific reason. And it could be different versions of being in service, right? It could be the kind of the work that we do, which is servicing people and helping them clear things and become healthier spiritually, mentally, emotionally, right? Or it could be someone who's here to really work with the earth and the land and animals and plants and organic medicinals or whatever it is, right? But I feel like this is such an important time for people to really come in and let go of all of that mental programming that says your life and your income and your value and worth is determined by your work and has to look like this, this, and this. We're here to actually break all those paradigms, to break the mold and really step into the roles that we're meant to play here. And this is actually the time that we're being called forward, and it can be scary. But we're here and our soul knows it. People are getting activated right now. They're getting tapped right now. And I've had clients come to me and go, I know I'm supposed to be doing this and I have to, and I'm so full of joy, but how is that going to replace this income or this? What are people going to think if I drop this career and I do something kind of out there, that's not traditional? And my advice to them is you have to jump. Because if your soul's calling you, it's going to work out. When you're on your path, everything comes and aligns perfectly to move you forward, just like you jumped.
That was it. Just a leap of faith, right? And the thing is, when we talk about being programmed and, feeling almost, caged, is we're our own jailer.
Right?
right? We're our own jailer. We're the ones that hold the keys to open the door and let ourselves out, or
Yes.
keep ourselves in because it feels safer.
We're
So
literally caged and holding the key and
we're
going, wow,
literally
I'm
caged and
stuck. I'm
holding the key.
trapped. I can't go anywhere.
Right. I can't, and we list a laundry load of why we can't, open that door. And when you think about, now, some of those are very real, right? Like, if you have tons of responsibilities and you're the only, I can't see myself having done this 28 years ago. I That's the reality of it. That
Mhm.
my fear was bigger. I was very hell bent on like this growth and this schooling and getting to this level because, again, like you said, that's the mentality that we are fed for a long time. Like, this is how things work. And I personally feel like, because that benefits many other entities except yourself. When you're feeling like, I have to go to school in order to make a better, make more money, or I have to go to school to have an education, to have a title, to get into this, again, there's certain things we've been fed. And I did the things. I went to the schools and I got the degrees and I've done the things.
You
And then I
achieved
came
the
to this
dream.
realization, achieved the dream that I thought I wanted, that other people, would look at and be like, wow, look at her. Look at where she came from and look where she's at. And then I just thought, what am I living for them or for me? And what does that look like? And when we stop worrying about what other people will think if we do leave this job and this income and this title and whatever it is for this, that honestly, I have gotten um more love and just these messages of, God, how inspiring. Like, I think about, like, what can I do to be able to achieve something similar? Like, I no longer want to be stuck here. What can I, when people they look at you and they're like, girl, you're doing it, right? You're living it. Look at you. And, you're this and you're doing that. It feels great. Like, okay, I hope it's an inspiration for you to think about, like, what can I do? Now, mind you, if that is your thing, that's your dream, that's what you've been wanting to do, and you really feel it in your soul, continue doing it, crush it.
Exactly. But a lot of people aren't feeling it in their soul. And it's, that list, it's fear, that whole list why you can't leave the marriage, that whole list why you can't leave this company, and it's toxic and it's soul crushing. That is all fear. It has nothing
Yeah.
to do with who you are, what you're capable of, what your potential is, and what if you
What if?
jump
Yeah.
and the whole world opens to you and catches
Yeah.
you and lifts you. And that is
Yeah.
what I have found with so many of the people that have been clients of mine. It's like when you can help them let go of the program and the concern about being judged or not accepted by family. Because let's face it, our families have huge influences on us.
Oh,
Whether you have a good
100%.
relationship or a contentious relationship with family members, their opinions really impact a lot of people, right? And so it takes courage, but when you have that courage to step out, you are paving the way for others because they're like, wow, wait a minute, she was able to do it. That means that it might be possible for me. You plant the seed
Yeah.
that it's possible when you have the courage to
Yeah.
choose you.
Yep.
And
100%.
it's incredible. It's so much more than we could even say, right? Having the flexibility and control over our lives. And of course, with remote working being so common now, you could go live in Spain for 2 months. Although Sebastian, your dog, would miss you terribly. But I mean, you could do it if you wanted to,
Yeah.
There's so much
Yeah. Yeah. If I
opportunity.
100%. And I think, again, and what you said earlier was, I did set it up for me. Now, unknowingly and unintentionally, because honestly, and I think I've said this before, is, had the pandemic not hit, I wonder, would I have taken the leap?
Mm-hmm.
Mind you, right before the pandemic, because December of 2019 is where I initially put on my calendar that June 30th, 2020 was going to be my last day at the agency. So the thought was there. The
The
thought,
seed was
like, okay, I'm gonna get,
planted,
the
right?
seed was planted. I had gone through some like life coaching and some therapy, and I was just like, yeah, this is soul crushing. It's not working for me. This is not what I want. And then the pandemic hits, and then it just sort of like encapsulated everything again of like the uncertainty. Oh my goodness, what if, what if, what if, what if? And as my private practice grew, that so many people were in need of services and therapy and coaching and guidance, that I thought, I'm I'm in the wrong, no, I'm not in the wrong business, but I'm really being held back by the 9 to 5.
And well, you had a long
And
commute too, so you didn't even have
oh,
a
it
lot
was,
of buffer on each side. It was like a 3 hour commute on top of these long days. So I mean, you're spent, you know.
yes, yes. So I just thought, okay, you know what? We're gonna figure out what this whole pandemic thing is, and then come June of 2021, I submitted my letter of resignation thinking it's gonna work out. It's gonna work out.
And it not only
And
worked out, you're thriving.
yes,
You're so
yes,
happy. It's so beautiful. I feel it when I talk to you, when I look at your beautiful smile, when I see pictures of you traveling. I'm like, I can just feel your soul is so free and you're just enjoying every moment. And I just
yes,
love that. I know
yes.
family is really important to you. And I did want to talk to you about losing your grandma recently. And what has that been like for you? I know I think a lot of people are going through loss, similar types of loss with parents and friends, and even it's been surprising with people losing family members that are very young. It's just been really interesting. You know, it's an interesting time. So,
It has
what was that
been.
like for you?
Um, Wendy, I think my grandmother is the first person, now mind you, at my age, the first person that I've lost that has had meaning to me. Like, that's my grandmother, that's my mom's mom. I've had other people pass, but they weren't close to me. I
Mm.
didn't have this closeness. And I had just seen my grandmother for my birthday in September, and it was beautiful to just talk to her. And she and I still speak of her in present tense. She was a force to be reckoned with. She was funny. She was just gregarious. She was such in her time, she was born in 1932, of power. She owned her own ranch in Mexico. She made
What? She owned her
businesses
own
happen.
ranch?
She owned her own ranch as
That's
a
incredible.
female and now mind you, these are the stories that she tells, and I'm like, yeah, no wonder all of our women are such badasses in our family, because she talks about how she would sleep with a gun under her pillow because there was often someone that wanted to come and squat on her land. And then, in Mexico, it's easy to like pay anybody and do and paperwork, and all of a sudden something's yours. So she would sleep with a gun under her pillow, and she was not afraid to use it. And there was a couple of times that she shared these stories where, lawyers stepped onto her property and said, "Oh, we have here X, Y, and Z that says this is not yours." And she was like, she would like cock her gun. She would walk out with a rifle, and she would cock her gun and she would say, "Get off my land or I will shoot."
Oh my
And
God.
he's like, "Well, no, you won't, because X, Y." And she was like, she'd shoot close to their feet, and they would jump, and they would be like, "We will be back with, authority." And they would not come back. So she tells us these things, and I was like, "Oh my God, grandma, you look at you," and blah, blah, blah. And, she spent a night in jail because they were trying to take her property. And she tells us how she befriended these women that were sitting in jail with her, and that later they would come and seek assistance from her, like a night to stay, because they were trying to like cross the border or do whatever they needed to do to get back to their family. And this is who she's telling us she was, right? So again, she never worked a 9 to 5 in her life. She's always had her own businesses. She used to run different types of businesses, and she would sell cheese in Mexico, fresh cheese in Mexico and whatnot. So I look back at that and I just thought, this makes sense, right? Like,
who you are
This is
was
the
it's
lineage.
really built
Exactly.
on the foundation of her, right? And her strengths and
100%.
values and
So the passing was a surprise. I had just seen her in September. She passed in December, December 20th. And it was a shock. There was no illness. She often would say, and she got caught praying a couple of times by my mom, and that my mom would overhear her tell God, "I'm tired. I'm ready to go home."
mm,
So that to me was like, okay, she had just turned 90 in October.
90.
90,
Wow.
90 years old in last October. So not that it was a surprise, but it was a surprise. So it was impactful and really interesting to me. So let me tell you what happened. So my mom calls, we go, we try to figure out what family members are going to travel into, Mexico to go take care of things that need to be taken care of. We're going to wait here for information of when the body's going to be given and, services are going to be started. And so family members left, we stay here. So I come home that night. It's probably like 4 o'clock in the morning by this time. And I'm a little wired, so I'm like in bed and I'm sort of flipping through TikTok and I fall asleep. My boys will tell you, I'm notorious for falling asleep with the phone in my hand, like scrolling through TikTok. And at one point I hear these distant voices and I realize what like I'm waking up. And then I realize, oh my God, TikTok is on. So I'm sitting there and I'm kind of like, really, Liliana, like you always do this. And I flip it, I scroll to the next one, half asleep, and this is what I hear. Your maternal grandmother will always be with you because when she was pregnant from your mom, you were already in her.
Oh my God. What?
And I'm like, okay, what dream am I in? And of course, it replays. And as I heard that like maybe 10, 15
What?
times because I was like, how am I getting this TikTok at this moment right now, waking
Middle of the
up,
night.
middle of the night where there's been nothing on my that's not been my algorithm. It's been like cats and
Right.
dogs, funny videos about
Right.
whatever.
Right.
And I listened and to the point where I'm reciting it verbatim. Okay. And I had this sense of peace because I thought this
Wow.
is a message from her.
Yes.
So a couple of days, are passing. We're trying to figure out when our service is going to happen. And I begin to feel sick. Waking up Tuesday morning, I was like, I'm probably feeling this way because I was out from 1 a.m. to 4:30 and blah, blah, blah. And
Mhm.
Tuesday it starts getting later and later. And I'm just like, God, like maybe I'm coming down with something. I wake up Wednesday and I'm like full on sick. I'm like, I caught a flu or a cold or something. Oh my goodness, whatever. We still don't know about services. Thursday. So Wednesday night, I'm not feeling any better. And I'm thinking, God forbid I caught COVID. Now, mind you, in 3 years, I've never caught COVID. I had been COVID, tested. I've never tested positive for COVID. And I thought, let me test. Sure enough, I'm positive. That was so devastating. I'm not that it was COVID, but that I was not going to be able to go to the services.
Mhm.
Oh, that hurt my heart. That hurt my heart. So I call a doctor. Doctor prescribes some COVID stuff, and my son picks it up, and I'm starting to take it, and I'm thinking, there's going to be a lot of elderly people
Right.
at the services. I can't do that. And my boys had been staying away from me. They tested. So they ended up driving out Friday for services, and they tested, and they were fine, and I had to stay home, and that hurt me, and I just thought. Now, mind you, one of the things I was really worried about for myself was I hadn't been able to cry.
Mm.
And I didn't know how I felt about that. I didn't know if should I feel bad? Why can't I cry? Like, what's wrong with me? Did I not love? Oh my gosh, was I not? I had all these thoughts. So, mind you, I had canceled clients Wednesday, no clients on Thursday. We're heading into Friday, and I'm sick. Like I've not felt, it wasn't like, it's like been, for me, it was like a flu and I just stayed in bed and I did whatever. But I felt so horrible. So Friday our services, I asked my boys to please FaceTime me in to at minimum be present in that manner. And they did. And so I have this, I'm looking at things happening and it was so surreal, Wendy, to have been part of this, not being physically present, and to have seen it through the eye, because my son had the phone in his pocket and I was just able to, like, sometimes depending on how tall or short people, I only saw like from here to like stomach area, like I rarely saw people's
Right.
faces, but I could see these things happening. And just, there was almost like my grandma was loved by so many.
You
My
could feel
my
it.
You could feel it. There was people there. There was not that there wasn't sadness, but it was everybody talking about like her jokes, and she had jokes for days. This she just, and there's a difference between jokes and I don't know what you call them. It's just this little like story that has like a funny piece to it, and she just had a way of telling jokes. So people were like recounting jokes. Remember when she would say this? So to have been able to participate and just see it was so surreal. It was so weird. So two interesting things happened. One, my grandma had already planned her services. And one of them was she knew what she wanted to wear. And the second thing is that she knew how she wanted her services to be laid out. And part of it was that she wanted a mariachi to go sing. She wanted a male female mariachi, but she only wanted males to sing.
How
Interesting, because
interesting.
grandma was like, she sang with her mariachis that she would have for her birthday and whatnot. The girls would sing, not an issue, but she wanted at her funeral only males to sing. I was like, interesting. And she wanted these specific songs. I didn't know yet what they were. The second thing she wanted was, well, let me get to that. So we see a mariachi come in. They're all women.
Uh-oh.
And they go and they sing. And it's sort of like one of those songs that you have at a funeral. And it was touching. And I just thought, interesting. And then you hear, oh my goodness, we're at the wrong burial site. We're so sorry. We're so sorry. This was not the mariachi for her.
Oh my
And
God.
my first thought was, that was grandma. That was her being a jokester.
That
was
was the
her.
last joke she was gonna.
That was it. Because people were mortified, like, oh my God, where's the guy? Like, what do you mean? How is you could see people panicking, like,
Oh my God. So how did they find the right spot?
so one of the girls gets a phone call and says, hey, we're on this side. And she's like, the mariachi singers are like, oh my God, we're at the wrong side. We're so sorry. But the interesting thing was that this was the mariachi that played at her birthday in October, just 2 months ago.
No way.
And I hear one of the girls saying, we came to pay our last respect.
Wow.
And they leave. Oh, that was touching. But I still hadn't had tears. And I was like, okay. They leave. And like 15 minutes later, grandma's mariachi shows up and they start playing. Well, they walked in with 2 horses. Grandma wanted 2 horses to come and dance for her at the cemetery because her and my grandfather met while on horses, and that was her departure. And I see these horses, Wendy.
You're making me want to cry right now.
I lost
Every
my
time
shit.
I have you on my show, you make me cry. I swear to God, Lili, every time.
Not my intention.
Oh, did you know that they were going to have these horses?
No, I had no clue. But I see them, I hear the song, they trail in, they come into focus into where I'm being FaceTimed. I have a clear vision of these 2 horses and they're prancing. And I just thought, that's so grandma. I knew at that moment this is what she wanted. And at that moment, I lose it. And I well up and I tear and then I literally start to cry. And this is what happens in that moment. I kind of like just bow my head in tears, and I did close my eyes, and I've tried to explain this to people, and I'm like, this is the only way it makes sense to me. I felt her in my presence spiritually, and she held me into her bosom.
Oh, oh my
And I'm
God.
like, that part to me was so like, she understands I can't be there, but she's here with me. And it was just so magical. There's no other word. And I just had this moment of like, okay. And I kind of like sit back up straight and I continue watching. And I just knew in that moment, because I think at that moment I felt like guilt that I wasn't able to show up. And
But it was
she
so
came to say, it's
perfect.
okay.
It was so perfect.
So perfect. So
Like you
perfect.
were
So
there, but then she was
yeah,
there.
and she was just there with me, which
Yeah.
was the magical
That
part.
was
So
like this final,
yeah,
tangible, physical exchange
yes,
between you, which couldn't have happened, I
100%.
don't think, if you were there.
I don't think it would have.
Yeah.
I don't believe it would have. So these little things have happened in this way, and I just thought, we're connected. We're so
Always.
connected. We're
Always.
so connected. So
Mhm.
that TikTok, crosses my mind every so often that says, and it was so interesting because it says your maternal grandmother will always be with you. And I was like,
It's like so specific, right?
what? Right? So as much as this has been impactful, and it's had these things had to happen in that way, I feel like there's just that connection, and I'm okay with it at this point. So thank you for remembering
Oh my
that and bringing
gosh.
it up
Thank you for
and
sharing
letting
that
me share that.
beautiful story, because I think, especially with the amount of people who are transitioning right now, I think we have to realize that the soul is eternal.
Mhm.
And sometimes, even though you lose the physical connection, you can have an even deeper experience of that essence or soul of the individual. And you almost can't put words to it,
Can't.
because you think, how is it going to be if I lose somebody and I can't physically hold them anymore or call them anymore? But there's just this even richer, deeper, um, energetic connection that can't be
Connection.
denied if you are present to it and open to it. It's always going to be there.
Can I share this that happened this morning?
Of course.
So my grandmother, she was spiritual. She had my grandmother, according to her, she never learned to read and write. So she couldn't read the Bible, but she owns a beautiful Bible, and she prayed so beautifully. Prayers I've never heard. So she would, like, if she would pray over us, or she would come and give us, like her prayer or her blessing, these were just her words. And I
Mm.
remember that deeply. And anytime we were out and about, especially when I was younger, and she would go up to a tree, for example, or a bush with like flowers on it. I would hear her ask for permission to take a flower or this orange or whatever it was. And then she would thank the tree. So I
Oh,
learned this from her. So it was something I had in the back of my mind. And, I would always tell my boys, you got to make sure that you're thankful, and that you're asking for permission, and that you're thankful when you're pulling this from A, B, C, and D. So this morning I went out into my backyard. My neighbor has this full uh, lemon tree. It's just overflowing with yellow lemons ready to be cut. And anything that's on my side, she's really sweet, and she's like, oh yeah, go ahead and take whatever, but I
yeah.
only need one. So I went and I was about to pull one. Mind you, it was like 8 o'clock in the morning. I just wanted to squeeze a little bit of lemon into my water. And I'm like in a bathrobe, and it's really cold right now in California. It's really, really cold. And I go and I reach for the lemon, and I have this like feeling or thought, and grandma was present. And I thought, oh, because I'm freezing cold. I just want to pull it and run, right?
You better ask for permission.
I have permission to take this lemon from you. And then that's all I said. I didn't wait for like an answer, but it was permission that I asked. And I, twist it and I pull it. And I said, thank you so much. And I walk inside, and then, your home is cozy. So I'm like, oh, it's so cold, right? And I go and I cut my lemon, and those are the moments that I think that's how we carry them with us.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we know energetically how these little memories and these little, things that we learned from them are just carried over. And that's how we honor their life and their presence.
Right. And it lives on through you, really.
It lives on through me. It's going to live on through my
Your
boys.
kids.
They do it. And sometimes my son's like, we have an orange tree that just blossomed. And my son, I went to go grab an orange, and he's like, are you asking for permission? And I start laughing because I'm like, oh, yes, I did. And I walk in. He's like, did you say thank you? I'm like, yes.
Your sons, they're so beautiful, just like their mother. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Oh, Lili, it's always so wonderful to have you. And I always feel like we just never have enough time.
Our time is gone.
Like we need to connect in person and talk for 3 hours one of these days.
Yes. I might head over to Texas one of these days.
Oh,
when the weather's nice.
Well, that's about 2 months out of the year, so I'll let you know. I'll let you know when you have the window.
When the window's available. If you're not out here.
Right, exactly. But I love you so much. I thank you for being my first guest of 2023. It is always a pleasure. And you always offer so much because you've had such a full life of learning and experience and growth, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional. And I just think you are so, so wise. And if people want to work with you, how do they find you?
Thank you. They can either go to my Instagram and send me a direct message, which is under Corazon Cultura Loteria. Or they can email me to last name Hernandez dot first name Liliana 1L at hotmail.com and reach out and let me know what it is that they're looking for, and we might make something happen.
Anybody would be so lucky if they could get into your calendar and schedule time with you. But I just want to thank you again for being you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for shining your light and sharing your blessings with the world. And to all my listeners, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you received a little something from our conversation. We love you, and be kind to yourselves, and we'll talk to y'all later. Bye.
Like a bird on a tree, I'm just sitting here. I got time, it's clear to see. From up here, the world seems small. We can sit together. It's so beautiful, you and me. We're meant to be in the great outdoors, forever free. Sometimes you need to go and take a step back to see the truth around you. From a distance you can tell. You and me, meant to be in the great outdoors, forever free. You and me, meant to be